Oh, me. Oh, my. All right. We are going to really quickly talk about this because we know how much hype this time last year, Caleb Williams, Drake May had already been selected as 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Even though Drake fell to 3. Sorry. But who going into this year? Now we know who's been taken, who's no longer playing college ball. Who in this next coming class, the Shedeur Sanders class, the Carson Beck, the maybe Jalen Milroe class, who are the guys that we need to be focused on?
To me, the big three, and it's pretty set in stone, I would say, is Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, and Shedeur Sanders. Oh, yeah. I think those are your big three guys. I think they're all top 10 picks next year. To me, it's just all three of those guys are so good, and they all kind of do it differently, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Shedeur is that super. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's the super accurate, doesn't miss many passes. He's got the good deep ball. Quinn Ewers is phenomenal with that deep ball. And I mean, Carson Beck can do it all. He's sneaky mobile too. He can move pretty well. And it's going to be interesting to see how those three shake out. If I had to guess right now, I'd probably say it's going to go Beck, Ewers, Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very real possibility. Carson Beck is the first Georgia quarterback taken number 1 since Stafford.
Ooh. So let's stay right there for a second. So we've seen the talent that Carson Beck has had, but we know that there was injuries on that team. So there was some games where he didn't have Brock Bowers. There's some games where he didn't have Kendall Mitchell.
Ladd McConkey
right then too. So it seems to me that it's more him than maybe it was Stetson. Stetson might have been the straw that stirred the drink. I feel from seeing last year with Carson being able to step in and have a couple issues. There's a couple games that South Carolina game, that Missouri game, where he had to be the guy and help take over the game. I guess what I'm asking is, does he have to win it all or get to right outside, like where he got this year, for him to get that recognition?
I don't think he's got to win it all. I think and especially with how packed the SEC is now with Texas, Oklahoma coming over. If you're statistically, you have a great season, but maybe you're 11-1, 10-2, somewhere in there, which I don't think they're 10-2. I think at worst they're 11-1. Mm-hmm. And you're fighting potentially for the SEC title game. You're essentially locked into a playoff spot with the 12 teams this year. I think that's enough. Yeah. I think Beck, and especially if he's having that good of a year, where now Bowers is out the door, now McConkey's out the door, now all those established weapons are out the door. If he has that kind of year again, he's locked into the number 1 spot for me. I mean, you could say the same about Ewers. He lost his 3 best weapons this year, with Sanders going out as the tight end, and Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. They're all gone. So,
not to mention he lost Brooks since November. You know?
Yep. So, and I mean, Shedeur's got most of his guys back. It's going to be interesting to see really who's kind of after that, and how many of the other guys go first round. Because like Nathan says there, I disagree with a lot of those guys going top 10 personally. Riley Leonard, Cam Ward, Drew Aller, all good picks. Potentially, if he ends up winning the starting job in Columbus this year, Will Howard. Don't sleep on Dylan Gabriel in Oregon. Like there's a lot of really good guys. Jackson Dart is another one a lot of people are sleeping on at Ole Miss.
I've seen a lot of attention for him for like at early Heisman. You know,
Jackson and rightfully so.
Jalen Milroe. What do you think about? Yeah, I was about to say, what do you think about him? Because he's gotten a lot better this last year but there are those things that you're like, okay, you still got to be able to throw that quick gimme pass, that 5-yard cross or whatever. You got to not rely on the legs. Can he be that quality dual threat, or is he always just going to be stop his legs and you can stop him?
I think he's developing into that sneaky good dual threat. And you know who he reminds me a lot from that kind of college to the NFL transition is Lamar, where it was that guy that was a very good runner and was that kind of sneaky good passer developed into a good passer.
Okay.
Where I like that. You're starting to see that with Milroe too. For anyone that watched this show from the start of last year, I was very vocal about how bad I thought Jalen Milroe was. And by the end of the year, he developed into a pretty freaking good quarterback. Now, Michigan exposed a lot of his weaknesses again, where it was that you've got to make those throws and he couldn't necessarily make some of them. Mm-hmm. But I kind of give him a pass on that just with how good that defense was. Yeah. So let's wait and see how he does this year. Again, another guy that lost what really people thought was his only weapon this past year, and Jermaine Burton is out the door. And some of those running backs like McClellan and them gone too. So I think he's a guy that I think he's going to sneak into the first round, be one of those kind of 25 to 32 picks where somebody moves up just to get that 5th-year option on him. Mm-hmm. But I think Milroe's a sneaky good prospect to develop in the NFL and a guy that should be the front runner for the Heisman this year. One of the front runners, I should say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And look, we know the ability and how well he's played. And to your point, man, and that's why I give a lot of credit to you because I spoke on it, but you were very vocal about, hey, this guy ain't it. He ain't it. But if you and ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch our shows, man, because there's a progression throughout the season where you start coming along, you're like, oh, okay, all right, well, you can do this. After that South Florida game, it was like, bruh, get him out of here. He's done.
Yeah. Well, and the Texas game, and it was
right.
And then he ended up getting a couple game balls by the end of the year. So, I mean,
it got better. But again, you got to play the full next year. So we're going to see. He's definitely one of those guys up there. I want to throw a couple more names at you. Cam Rising, Graham Mertz.
I love
Dylan Gabriel. KJ, Cade Klubnik, the other Jalen Daniels. DJ, you know what I mean? Like some of these guys, we've seen them fluctuate. We've seen them go up really high, and then we've seen them kind of come back down. What do any of those guys kind of crack that first round? Do any of these guys kind of like show out this year?
Oh man, that's tough. I don't really think so. Rising's just. It's the fact that he's been there forever. I think that's going to screw him, especially with how many good quarterbacks are in the draft this year. The one I kind of like to maybe sneak into the first round if he has a really good year is DJ. This is one of those top recruits, had all the talent in the world, and just couldn't really find his offense. He had a good year this past year. Yeah. And you go from Oregon State to Florida State, which I know they don't necessarily have all the weapons they had this past year, but that's still a good team down in Tallahassee with some good weapons. Exactly. I think they can make some noise this year, and he could sneak into the first round of the draft. I really think that could happen.
Ooh, I like that. I mean, you talk about a guy that's kind of similar to Spencer Rattler, not necessarily in character, but as far as hype. When he first came to Clemson, he was supposed to be the second coming, and obviously Klubnik took that spot. Oregon State, he was able to kind of, he had a solid year, and then that was great. But then now at Florida State, so it's back to one of these top tier schools. For me, I think he could move up in there. I mean, hopefully he will. Ward is another one who I'm hoping has a really great year, but I could see a team, if he has this amazing year and takes these guys deep into the playoff, that a team kind of comes and says, let's take a chance on a guy like that. Let's go to Daniels real quick. The other Jalen Daniels, you know what I mean? The guy out of Kansas.
One that helped bring Kansas back on the map.
Right. So I mean, we can't look down upon that. I mean, the last couple years when they started 4-0. I mean, we had all the perennial college basketball power starting undefeated. I love that.
If I'm not mistaken, they got to 7-0 that year. Like they were
right.
Yeah. They got
So
deep into the season, undefeated.
So
I really, really like Daniels.
yeah.
And I think he's a guy that's probably one of those day 2 development picks, kind of like what we saw with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I like that comparison for those two, where it's a guy that's a really solid college quarterback and can become a really good NFL quarterback. Might just need to get to the right situation, might need a year or two to kind of sit and learn. It's a guy that's going to be a good quarterback. And I mean, he could, with some of these other guys we're talking about, he could be one of those guys that you trade up to 30, 31, 32 just to get that extra year on the contract. So I think that's a legit possibility in my mind.
I mean, honestly, we're going to see. I mean, again, you see the title way too early.
I mean, yeah,
way too early. But again, this is when these conversations start happening. And I like to get ahead of this, because once the season starts, obviously, like this past year, you're already going to be, two guys are going to probably be shoved in your face. Shedeur, we know he's in the media a lot right now. So he'll be up there. And we're going to bring you that story next time for sure, because it's just getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah, we can't talk about it yet because it's far from done.
Right, exactly. But then, you're going to get a couple other guys that are going to be lifted up. But I honestly want to see, especially with this 12-team playoff this year, I want to see how some of these guys, man, this is it. Come on, man.
Like, and home playoff games for some of these teams.
Right? In December. And no more of a month off. We're getting guys playing again. And we're going to discuss this a little none of these other days. That schedule from like Thanksgiving on till like February.
When you compare NFL college and the NFL, so good. And it's from Thanksgiving till the end of January, basically.
Yeah.
Like it. Wow. Oh, cannot wait.
I love it. Look, it's going to be a bloodbath. Hey.
Yes, sir, it will.
But I will say this, whoever comes out of it, all those questions that we had, null and void. Because now, top 12 teams, if you can't make it, you had your opportunity to play and continue to play. And like you said, home field advantage for some of these teams. Yeah. Come on now.
Well,
that's
going to
be huge.
It's like, so the way it's set up is there's only 5 spots locked in. Mm-hmm. It's the Power 4, essentially now, conferences, and the best group of 5 team.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones locked in. After that, it's the next 7 best teams. So, I mean, I think you're going to see probably Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan from the Big Ten. I think from the SEC, you're probably going to see Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss. I'm throwing them in there.
Yeah.
That's 9 already.
Come on, man.
That's 5. No, that's what? 6 of the 7 wildcard teams I've thrown in right there.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you bouncing one of those out for like maybe a Notre Dame gets in there, or maybe whoever second in the ACC or the Big 12? I don't really necessarily see that this year, but you never know with Utah and Arizona. Like there's some legit teams that are still going to be left out, but
oh yeah,
man, seeing this 12-team playoff shakeout is going to be so much fun. You can see, I mean, look at some people projecting these playoffs. A lot of people have projected a Michigan Notre Dame first round playoff matchup.
Come on, man.
Where you're getting that in December at either of those stadiums. Like that. Woo. That is insane to think about. There was what I saw in Oregon, Georgia was one of those like first round matchups, stuff like that, where it's just like, this isn't stuff they planned 5-6 years in advance, like that Oregon Georgia game a couple years ago. This is, you find out 2 weeks before that you're playing that game, and it's go time.
Yep.
Cannot wait.
So while the 12 teams that officially get in, after that, you can't talk about it. But prior to that, the build up on, look at this team's schedule. Look at this team. Yeah. Who is it? Who's on the bubble of 13 and 14? Yeah. Who's going to get up? Oh, let's go, man.
So good.
Cannot wait. Nathan says, "Did the remaining teams in the Pac-12 find new homes?" That's
From
what
my
Oregon State.
understanding, no. Oregon
Was it
State,
Oregon
Washington State are still kind of
Yeah.
hanging around.
So they have what, a year to see if they can essentially recruit others, or are they?
I think it's 2 years.
Oh, 2 years. Okay.
Now it sounds like they've pretty much just given up on the idea of the Pac-12 again. Because if you look at the other sports, they've gone with the what is that? One of those conferences out west. I think it's the one like Gonzaga and them are in for basketball.
Was it the? No, that's not the Western Athletic Conference. What is Gonzaga in basketball? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think most of the sports have kind of gone into those conferences over there. And it's still kind of sounding like Oregon State, Washington State will end up in the Mountain West. No, it's not. It's not the Mountain West because that's like San Diego State, Boise State, all those, and that's still a football conference. Mm-hmm. This one was one that does not have a football. West Coast, thank you.
The West Coast Conference.
Yeah. So you'll probably see like Oregon State and Washington State in basketball, for example, play in the West Coast Conference. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the football ones will end up in the Mountain West, which is fun for that conference because then you've still got like, I mean, bringing it back to the playoff thing this year, for that best group of 5 team that's locked into the 5 seed, if I'm not mistaken. Well, they'll probably be the 5th ranked team of those 5 conference champions. But you've got Liberty, you've got JMU, you've got Boise State this year with Malachi Nelson. Mm-hmm. There's so many Tulane, Tulsa, all those schools as well. And I think this might kind of force Notre Dame into a conference finally, because if you look at it, those top 5 spots are locked. So whether Notre Dame's ranked 1 or whether they're ranked 6, the highest spot they can be ranked is 6th in this playoff.
Right. So they might as well join now. I mean, been holding out as long as possible. He said, how does this affect the basketball side?
For the Pac-12, Pac-12 is just done sports-wise regardless, it sounds like. Pretty much everyone's found their home for almost every sport. So the Pac-12 as a whole will dissolve, which is extremely unfortunate. That they all had to follow the football side of things. Yeah. Because like we've said, the whole traveling multiple times a week, and some of these, like in the middle of the week, you'll see like a USC play a Rutgers in basketball or something like that, where it's like a Wednesday night and they have to fly across the country and back. Like it's a little ridiculous for all those other sports. But
Cal and Stanford in the ACC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And even SMU for that standpoint. Like, you're still traveling from like Texas to, I mean, them for like to Florida State and all that isn't that bad. When you're going up to that northeast end of the country there, like if they're going to play at Boston College, for example.
Right.
It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, Nathan. And it's unfortunate that the rest of the sports had to follow suit, but
yeah. And we talked about this off camera about how, you know, the Pac-12 this year was playing like they were playing like they thought they had a chance by their play to keep the conference. And I'm not gonna lie, man, that's the best Pac-12 I've seen in a number of years.
Very long time, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to have a lot of their teams kind of all be at least knocking on the door at one point in the season. So, yeah, we're going to see. Look, time travel is going to be an issue. Well, it is.
It's taking the student part out of the student athlete, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of, it seems like that's where we're headed.
That's where we're headed. And that's another topic for another day.